Zilch left, 35 Wichita Macho
Dice
Toe.
right, F5.
Dice right numbers, 3 Jet Spielberg.
Ready? Right. All right, and welcome into the first episode of the Pre-Snap Pressure podcast. I'm one host, Nick Collazo. I'm joined by my other host, Ryan Shapiro. How you doing today, Ryan?
Doing good. I'm outside today in the Texas shade, I
Yeah,
guess.
we're both rocking with temporary setups for now, but in a couple weeks
Yeah.
we'll have a permanent setup for both of us. That'll
When we
probably,
get back to school, and those will be the temporary permanent, I guess.
yeah, I guess it'll look better than what it does right now. So, anyways, first episode, about 5 weeks away from the college football season. That makes me really excited.
It cannot come fast enough.
Yeah, we've been both
It cannot come
anxious,
fast enough.
and didn't help that we were both of us were just at SEC Media Days last weekend. That made us really anxious for football to start again. So, speaking of
When
SEC,
it went out and got a college football 26 solely after SEC Media Days.
it's a cool $70 to drop after that. Anyways, speaking of the SEC, that's going to be the topic of today's episode. We a couple days ago released rankings on social media. We both made power rankings for the SEC and all the teams in it. So we're going to go through, explain our rankings, and talk about each team. So first up, starting off the Alabama Crimson Tide. You had them ranked. Where did you have them ranked?
5. You also had them at 5.
I had them at 5 too. Okay. So
I think that is one of like 3 teams that we had in the same spot. The other 2 being Mississippi State and Kentucky.
So the bottom 2. Okay. Well, second year under Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if we call last season a disappointment, I guess. I mean, the 3, at least in regular season play, the 3 losses, 2 pretty bad ones to 2 teams they really shouldn't have lost to.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? I know one of them was Oklahoma, and they put up 3 points.
The other one was
and Vanderbilt.
Vandy, which they let 40. They had Vandy run off 40 on them. So
I'm looking at this now. Alabama should not have lost a game last year after that Georgia game.
they really shouldn't. The only kind of, I guess, excusable loss would be that Tennessee game, but that was still a very winnable game. Both teams were trading turnovers back and forth. It was just bad. That was a bad game for both of those teams. Tennessee just happened to play slightly better. But at least looking at the Crimson Tide, they return a lot of starters on defense. They are incredibly deep, especially at secondary. I really like this group of corners they have.
Yeah, I mean, and also like on the offense as well, they've got, Jam Miller and Ryan Williams back. Ryan Williams was probably one of the biggest names in college football last year.
Especially,
and then Ty Simpson for his first season, the former 5-star.
Yeah, especially made a name for himself after the Georgia game. With those 2 crazy catches, especially that one late to put them ahead. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
I'm sure you don't.
They did lose. They'd lost a couple guys in the portal. I'm looking at the main 2 really were Justice Haynes, the second running back they had with Jam Miller last year, and Devontae Smith, the safety, who went to Notre Dame. Haynes went to Michigan. So those are 2 really only big losses I see for Bama in terms portal wise. But they brought in another good class under Kalen DeBoer. They brought in some good transfers. Isaiah Horton, the wide receiver from Miami, one of them. I think this is just going to be another good year for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Year 2, expecting maybe a jump. I just think there's so many other good teams in the SEC that I feel like 5 is kind of a good fit for them, especially with a first-time permanent starter quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it like they don't really have the easiest schedule in the SEC. They're on the road against Georgia this time around. They're going into Como, which has been one of the toughest places to play the last couple of years. They go to South Carolina, who's coming off a really good year, could make for some noise in that game. And then obviously the Iron Bowl, it doesn't matter what the records are in that game. It's always anybody's game in that one. So it's the SEC, you're never going to have an easy schedule, but you're also never going to, this schedule is a little bit tougher in my eyes.
Yeah, I would say so. Some pretty difficult home games for them too. Tennessee, LSU, but they've defended home pretty well the last few years, mainly on the road where they've had falters. All right, moving on. Let's head to Arkansas is the next team to talk about. We both are not very high on Arkansas this year. I have
Mhm.
them at 13. You had them at 14. I just feel like Arkansas, just when you stack them up to the rest of the conference, I just really don't see a lot of things that this team is exceptionally good at. They have some really good pieces. Taylon Green, I think, will take a jump this year and be a pretty solid quarterback. There's just so many holes that this team has that if you put them in an average conference aren't really holes, but compared to the rest of the SEC, I feel like they're just not really glaring issues, but issues.
I mean, yeah, yeah. There's nothing really special that they got from the portal either. Uh, I mean, it's just they didn't. They tried building through the portal, and they really just got like a bunch of guys that probably left for, I mean, no reason in specific, but
There's a, there's a couple guys. Jaden Platt, tight end from Texas A&M, is one of them. Omega Blake, a wide receiver from Charlotte, another decent addition. But yeah, it's just top to bottom. There's a lot of these portal guys just kind of seem like, I guess, roster fillings for depth, and Arkansas is maybe hoping these guys can come in and make some sort of a huge impact in terms of roster turnover. I personally don't see it.
yeah, I mean, and then the defense is about the same as last year, if I'm right. Yeah, I mean, the defense is returning a lot of guys from its roster last year, so I mean, if they can hold the fort down, maybe they can find a little momentum later in the season. Um, but then you've also got, I mean, you're going into Austin, into Death Valley, into Neyland. You're playing in versus Notre Dame. You've got Auburn who's coming to town. You've got the Tigers who you got Mizzou who's coming to town. That's
Yeah.
another big rivalry game. So another one that could go any way, no matter who's good, who's
Yeah,
bad.
looking at the schedule, this
You've
might be
got
one of the hardest in the SEC, and
yeah, it's
which they're all hard, but this is a tough one.
yeah, it's not going to be a fun schedule for Arkansas this year.
All right, moving on. We're going to go to Auburn next. Auburn, another team that kind of built heavily through the portal this offseason, one of the top, I believe, 10 most teams with the most additions through the portal. But I like a lot of their additions through the portal. They got Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech, of course. They brought in Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma to be their quarterback. The only thing that concerns me with Auburn is A, can Jackson Arnold limit the turnover problem he had at Oklahoma last year? And B, is the running game still going to be there? They lost Jarquez Hunter to the NFL, so I'm a little skeptical if they're going to be as good running the ball as they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't super excited to see that Jackson Arnold pull for Auburn. I don't really think he's going to be anything special. I know he was supposed to be the next best thing, um, you know, for Oklahoma, and obviously Oklahoma had their receiver problems last year, a lot of injuries. I think they were rolling out fifth, sixth, and seventh string guys. Um, so I obviously they had those problems, but you, they just don't. Jackson Arnold just doesn't necessarily seem like he's going to be that quarterback to me. A lot of people had him super high last year, and they have him super high again this year. And yeah, like you said, if he can limit those turnover problems, I could see Auburn doing a little bit better. But I just don't think they're going to be very good. And we both had them in the same spot. We both had them at 12. So
Yeah, Auburn's problem last year offensively was just they had a primarily running quarterback. I want to say primarily running, but whose I guess best skill was running the football, who struggled with turnovers. And I feel like they went out into the portal and got the same type of quarterback. They got a running quarterback who last year had a bunch of turnover problems. I I just don't see the fit.
yeah, it's nothing special to me. Maybe he fits the Auburn system a little bit better than the Oklahoma system, but I think that's what Coach Freeze was talking about at SEC Media Days, and that's another thing that I don't love about Auburn. I'm not the biggest fan of Hugh Freeze.
All right.
I just-
So we are 3 down and moving on from all the A teams, and now we're moving on to the Florida Gators, who I think are going to be much improved this year. They got really hot at the end of last year, especially when DJ Lagway took over the reins as the starting quarterback after Graham Mertz got down. And yeah, I personally think this is going to be one of the better teams in the SEC, but I still think they're going to have some struggles, especially with how hard their schedule is. They have, I think, the toughest schedule in the SEC. Um, they go to Miami this year, which, at Miami is not really that, intimidating of a away
it's not a
environment, but
softball.
it's still Miami. They go to LSU, to Texas A&M, to Ole Miss. They play Georgia in a neutral ground. They play Texas at home. They play Tennessee at home, which could be a good game. There's just a lot of good teams in Florida's schedule
Yeah,
this year.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely up there for one of the toughest schedules that I've seen. Might be the toughest schedule. I know a lot of people are saying they have the toughest schedule, um, but I think they're a solid team. But I think the Georgia game gonna be it's a rivalry game, so it's a toss up in my eyes. Any rivalry game is a toss up, but Texas, that's not gonna be an easy game. At Ole Miss, that's not an easy game. At LSU, that's not an easy game. Miami has a quarterback who's played SEC football for a few years now, in Carson Beck. So it's not an easy schedule on the slice, but and even Kentucky, like that's an easy game, but it's on the road.
Yeah, playing at
And
Kentucky's no joke.
yeah, and well, we saw last year Kentucky beat Ole Miss on the road. So and it's anything can happen. Just I don't necessarily see Florida lighting it on fire this year.
They didn't build much through the transfer portal, but one guy they did get who I really like this addition was J. Michael Sturdivant from UCLA. I feel like Florida might have a top 5 receiver room in the conference with Eugene Wilson coming in for his sophomore season, that addition of J. Michael Sturdivant, and then Dallas Wilson's a really talented freshman who I think can make an instant impact for them. I feel like that is going to be the best part of this Florida team. You have the talent at quarterback, you have the talent at receiver. They just need to put it to action.
I will say it's going to be interesting. They didn't really change the team that much. They've got a lot of guys that have been in the program. Their entire defense is returning. So not necessarily returning starters, but their entire defense is returning. So that's always a really good sign um, for a team. They could be a lot better than people are saying. I will say that.
All right, let's move on to the defending champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. I had them at number 1, you had them at number 2. So obviously, both of us think very highly of this team. My concern is Kirby Smart mentioned it at Media Days. 51%, I believe, of their roster is first and second year players. So that is a young team. They have inexperience at quarterback, but they brought in some guys through the transfer portal, especially at receiver. They brought in Zachariah Branch. They brought in Noah Thomas. So 2 really good weapons, I think, for Gunnar Stockton. I believe the offense will be much improved this year, and of course, the defense is always a Georgia defense. So
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask him about that. I was gonna ask, you've got, over half the team as first or second year, and how are you gonna get them back into the how are you gonna develop your team enough to get them back into the championship this year? And I didn't get that opportunity, um, but it's all right. It's still a good team. They're still gonna be a good team. Um, I think Gunnar Stockton should be a good quarterback. Should be. He showed a lot of promise in that Texas game and the SEC championship game. Showed a lot of toughness as well um, against one of the best defenses of last season. So they should be a good team. They should win a lot of games this year. They should find themselves back in the championship game.
I talked about the defense, but one position specifically I wanted to mention was the edge rusher slot. They lost Michael Williams and Jalen Walker both to the NFL, and then shockingly, Damon Wilson hit the portal. I still haven't really gotten a reason why, but he's now at Mizzou. So they were looking a little thin, but they went out and they got Elo Madozi from Army, who I think he's going to be a really stellar addition. 6'3", 240. That's a big guy they have coming off the edge. So not really worried about Georgia's edge game, especially with losing so much.
Does he still have to enlist now? Now that he transferred?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, you can play college football for the next 2 years, but you got to go
Get ready to be
to
deployed.
the Army. Yeah, no draft for you. Uh,
All right, moving on. We have the Kentucky Wildcats. I don't really think we have much to say about them. We both have them at 16.
yeah, I mean, nobody really has much to say about this team right now, unfortunately. Um, there's just not a lot going on. They're the one team you're always rooting for to pull off the upset because they're never going to be a threat for the conference championship. Um, they're bringing in Zach Calzada from Incarnate Word,
Who
who threw
he
for
he knows a thing or two about upsets.
he threw for 3,700 yards last year and had 35 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, which is some pretty solid numbers for any quarterback, just anywhere. So um, I I would love to see him do good in the SEC, and I hope he has a good season because that'd be cool. But there's nothing really special about this team in my eyes.
I mean, it's just what playmakers they did have last year either went to the NFL or went to the portal. Their top two receivers, Dane Key and Barry and Brown, have transferred. Their tackles leader went to the NFL draft. Maxwell Hairston was drafted in the first round. That was their best corner. And yeah, again, bringing in another new quarterback, it's just a lot of question marks. Over half their offense is brought in from the portal. So, I mean, it's just too many question marks to say definitively that this team is going to be able to get any traction this year.
Yeah, I mean, and then you look at their schedule. Their first SEC game, by the way, is week 2. They are playing Ole Miss at home, but they're playing Ole Miss, who they upset last year. They're looking for some payback. Then they go, for their next SEC game on the road to South Carolina, on the road to Georgia, at home versus Texas, at home versus Tennessee. That is 4 straight games of opponents who either made the playoffs or nearly made the playoffs last year. Then you've got on the road at Auburn, you're home against Florida. There's just so many teams in this schedule that, yeah, maybe they could pull off an upset or two, maybe, but even then, I I have very little faith in this team right
All right, moving on to the LSU Tigers. Both team were both pretty high on. I had them at 4. You had them at 3.
now.
I think LSU has the chance to be the best offense in the country, maybe. Uh,
I think they will be.
Problem is their defense was god awful last year, and it's a really hard turnaround to make in 1 year for your defense to go from god awful to decent to at least be kind of be on track, held on track with the offense.
Yeah, well, at SEC Media Day, Brian Kelly was talking about, you know, we went to the portal to build a championship team and build a championship defense, and they believe that they did that. It'll be, interesting to see. Whit Weeks will be, back in the lineup this year. He was out for most of the season last year, so that'll be a big get back for them. And I mean, when you have a potential offense like LSU's, it's not always easy, or it's not, oh, well, as long as the defense holds them to 28 points, we should probably win. Like, that's how good this LSU offense could be this year.
Yeah, I said earlier I think Florida might have a top 5 receivers in the SEC. I think LSU has the best receiver room in the SEC. They
Yeah.
got 2 stellar transfers in Barry and Brown, who we just mentioned from Kentucky, and Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. But then they still have Aaron Anderson. It's just so much talent on the receivers. I think they also have the best quarterback going into the season in the SEC with Garrett Nussmeier. So Offense,
Was he second team SEC All SEC? Was Lenore Sellers the
I
first
think he
QB?
was. I think he was second team. Um, but I just this offense is gonna be unreal.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing that I see on this offense that makes me scream, "Oh, this guy is gonna ruin it for everyone." No, even Chris Hohn Jr. is a second string receiver this year, and he's one of the best deep threats on this team. I mean, he came back last year, and the deep ball all of a sudden started working like it had never, uh, been missed. And it'll be, he'll be one of the better receivers on this team in my eyes. And I just think this offense will be one of the most explosive in the country.
All right, moving on yet again. Next team up is the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Again, this is the third team we both had ranked in the same spot, and like Kentucky is at the bottom of bottom of the list at 15.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another team there's nothing there for me to really talk about. There's nothing special about them. They weren't great last year. I believe it's their head coach's second year. So hopefully they're a little bit better than they were last year. You always want to see improvement. Yeah, it's Jeff Levy here. Yeah, I think it is his second year. But you always want to see every team. You want to see some upsets here and there. So I would like to see Mississippi State have a better season. I like Mississippi State as a team. I don't know. I've always liked them. But right now, I mean, they went 0-8 in the conference last year. I've got
And
nothing for them.
that was with a first team All SEC receiver who's now
Yeah.
left and gone to a different team. That was with a young quarterback at Michael Van Buren who showed promise, who's left and gone to a different team. It's just like whatever I guess glimpses they showed last year and what they could improve on this year left in the offseason. So don't think anything good is going to come, at least from Starkville.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Next is the Missouri Tigers. When we posted these rankings a couple days ago, I feel like this was the team we got uh, the most criticism for, and by we I mean mostly you. You had them at
Mm-hmm.
4.
Mm-hmm. I will stand on that, dude. They have the easiest schedule in the SEC by miles. According to ESPN, like their schedule, every SEC team is ranked in the top 20. Mizzou is 20 in strength of schedule this year. They have they have one question at quarterback. That's it. They have Ahmad Hardy, who was the best running back in the transfer portal. They picked up the top defensive player in the transfer portal. They picked up an all SEC first team receiver. There's I don't know where all this negativity from Mizzou came from. I think it was just because, oh, Luther Burden's gone, this team's gonna be trash.
Well, I
No,
think
they
also
have
no, go ahead.
no, you go.
Well, I think also another comes with bringing in a new quarterback who's been in college a lot but hasn't really gotten any starting experience. Bo Perulo from Penn State. But also, you mentioned the easy schedule. It's still an SEC schedule. They still got to play Alabama at home, Texas A&M at home, South Carolina at home. They go to Auburn. It might be the easiest in the SEC, but you still said it's 20th hardest in the country. So I
Yeah,
feel like that is also kind of dissuading any hype.
yeah, you're not wrong. It's still an SEC schedule. But Faroe Field has been one of the toughest places in the country to play in, I mean, at least the last 2 years. I believe they're 15-1 in their last 16 home games. They went 7-0 last year at Faroe.
Yeah, well, that that
They they defend that place like it's their life.
I think that one
I mean,
loss was
Brady.
to the Heisman winner, right? It was to Jaden Daniels and LSU.
Yeah, it might have been, but I mean, Brady Cook went to the hospital against Auburn and came back to produce a game-winning drive. Drew Pine, who is, let's just say, not the best quarterback, um, provided a pretty good game against Oklahoma, especially in that fourth quarter. I mean, he stepped up when it mattered. So the Faurot Field is, in my opinion, one of the tougher places to play in the SEC, just based off of win loss record. So, and you've still got guys like Zion Young, Chris McClellan, Toriano Pride, who are going to hold down the fort. You've got Jalen Catalon, who's transferring in. It's it's not a bad team. I don't know why people are so down on them. Now, I will say I don't necessarily think they're the fourth best team in the conference, but I will say they are. I think they will finish fourth.
All right. Some justification from the heavily criticized take there. All right, moving on to Oklahoma, who is another team. At least I think they're going to be a significantly better team this year than they were last year. You have them at 10. I had them at 8. Going back to last year, where did they finish? They finished 13th. But I think a big
Well,
part that I know, I feel like everybody knows, is they got hit by the injury bug bad last year. I mean, real bad.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was rough watching that Red River rivalry game um, between Oklahoma and Texas. I was fully expecting a great game because both were in the top 25, and then Texas just steamrolled them, and Texas had a bad game. I mean, Quinn Ewers was horrible in that game, and uh, I didn't realize until after the game that Oklahoma had three bench receivers out there.
Yeah, I think we're down to like what 5 or 6 string receivers out there at the end of the year. It was rough for them.
Yeah,
I still think receiver might be a question mark this year because they lost Nick Anderson to the portal. They brought in some talent at receiver through the portal as well. But I think the addition of John Mateer and Jaden Ott is what's going to propel this offense. They brought in a really good running back, a really good quarterback from Washington State, and this offseason, Brent Venables, instead of going out and getting a different defensive play caller, decided to take it upon himself to call the defense for Oklahoma. And we know how good Brent Venables is at running a defense. So I think Oklahoma will be a much better team this year.
yeah,
All right, moving on. The Ole Miss Rebels. Now, if we go look at our rankings, you had them at 7. I have them at 10. This was a team that finished just outside of maybe taking a trip to Atlanta for the conference championship, had some falters in games they really should not have lost. At home against Kentucky early in the year, and then they lost on the road at Florida. The problem with this team, I think, is going to face is they lost a lot on the defensive end, and I feel like that's what's going to hold them back. Austin Simmons, I think, is going to be a fantastic quarterback this year. Matter of fact, I had him as the third best quarterback, or I put him as third team all SEC in the preseason votes. I just think this defense has a lot of question marks.
yeah. I think it'll those first couple of games will definitely be big tells for what this defense is going to be this year. But Ole Miss, they don't really have like a. I guess going to Georgia is probably going to be their hardest game this year, but all their toughest games are going to be at home this year. They play LSU at home, they play South Carolina at home, and then they have Kentucky and Arkansas. They play Florida at home, and Mississippi State. They have the three, easiest teams in the SEC, that we have. Um, and those are one of them at home. The other two are on the road. I think they should be able to manage. I think the Georgia and Oklahoma games will probably be their toughest, and I think that's where they're going to falter the most, as well as against LSU. So I think they can manage, a 7-10 finish. Um, but I just don't think there'll be anything special this year.
Now, I will say, receiver, I think, is going to be a strength of them at the end of the year. At the beginning of the year, it might take a little bit to get it going from the receiving core. Out of their top 6 receivers, only one was on the team last year. Every other
Yeah,
receiver in that top 6 came from the portal. So that's a lot of new looks for a new quarterback. So I think it might take them a couple weeks to kind of get situated. But once they do, I feel like that's really going to be a strong suit. I think this is the team that has, I guess, the most chance to climb out of where we ranked them at the start of the year to where we are at the end of the year.
yes. Yeah, I actually agree with that a lot. I think it's it's a team that's got a lot of new faces. And if they mesh well together, yeah, we could honestly see them. probably in the playoff this year. But I think that's their ceiling. But if they don't mesh well, anywhere between 7 to 10 in the SEC wouldn't surprise me.
All right, moving on. The South Carolina Gamecocks, another team that was, I guess, interestingly ranked for us. I put them all the way at 3. You had them at 6. I think South Carolina is going to be an amazing team this year. I think Lenora Sellers has a Heisman caliber season. Um, I think they have the weapons on offense to kind of help them with that. Defense, they did lose, some really good players on defense. Nick Emenwari, of course, one of them. But I feel like Dylan Stewart might be a top 5 defensive player in the whole country this year. And I think that's going to propel their defense to at least be able to keep up with the offense and make them a really good team.
Yeah, I think honestly, my biggest question right now for uh, South Carolina this year is going to be that running back position. Rocket Sanders, probably one of the most exciting running backs in the SEC last year. I mean, even when I was watching him uh, against teams that I root for, I couldn't hate him. I was like, this guy's awesome. He's also his nickname is Rocket. It's,
I mean,
again,
it's just
so cool.
sick name, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to see how Lenoris is going to do, with his number one guy being a new face, coming from a non-SEC school.
Now, to be fair, if you had to get anybody to replace Rocket Sanders, they got the second highest ranked running back in the portal, Rasul Faison from Utah State. So I feel like running back they'll be just fine at.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the schedule. It's not the easiest schedule. It's not the hardest schedule. They've got Kentucky at home. They've got Vanderbilt at home. They've got Oklahoma at home. Those are three fairly easy games. Then they go Ole Miss on the road, LSU on the road, Missouri on the road. Those are three tough games. They also go to A&M. Kyle Field is no joke. That's a lot of people to fit in one place. And even they somehow managed to fit more than 100% of people in that stadium, which is nuts. Um, and then they've got Clemson at home this year, which they were able to upset Clemson last year.
Yeah, the past
If
couple
they can,
years, that rivalry has kind of been like flip flopped in terms of home field advantage. You always feel like the past few years, the home team has actually lost that rivalry. That's how it's been for the past 3, I think. Uh,
Mhm.
so that game's also a toss up between anybody. I feel like.
Yeah, it's a rivalry game. Any rivalry game, in my eyes, it's always a toss up. It's always just who shows up. But they've got Virginia Tech at home. That's not an easy game, but it's not necessarily a hard game either. So they've got a good mix. I could see them, going 10-2 maybe, but I can also see them going 7-5. And I think that LSU game is going to be one of the most exciting games this year.
That LSU game, I'm gonna have that marked on my calendar because that's one I'm
Yeah,
gonna be wanting to tune in to watch.
yeah, the top two quarterbacks in the conference.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We next up the Tennessee Volunteers. We know the drama during the spring portal with Nico Iamaleava leaving to go to UCLA, trying to get a better NIL deal. Ended up with a worse one actually over there in California. I just don't think this Tennessee team is going to be anywhere near as good as they were last year. I had them at 14. You had them at 13. So one spot off. This is going into spring camp before all the Nico drama. I felt like Tennessee was still going to be a very good team this year, but it was going to be a lot like if I have the year correct, Alabama in 2022. That Alabama team, while it was still a good roster, it wasn't really quite up to the standard that had been built up to that point. But they did have Bryce Young, who had his best season yet at Alabama, and he was propelling their offense to win games that, to be frank, they really should have lost. I feel like that was supposed to be Tennessee this year with the talent and experience that Nico would have had. But now that he's gone and they brought in a new guy from the group of 5, I just feel like there's going to be just games that this Tennessee team is going to lose.
Yeah, that was exactly what I pictured Nico to be this year. I think late in the season, especially that Tennessee offense just couldn't really get anything going. And it was, it's a freshman quarterback. You don't really see those guys starting in the SEC their first year. Um, but I think, with Nico leaving, they didn't really have a quarterback to replace him with. And it's just, what should have been a pretty exciting year for Tennessee is going to be, eh, at least I think, is going to be a pretty down year for them. I think their defense is still going to be good, but I think it's going to be, can this new quarterback produce for them? I don't know.
All right, moving on. 3 teams left to talk about. Two of them from the same state. First of the two from the great state of Texas, your home state, the Texas A&M Aggies. This is a team, I think I had them at 10. I had them at 9, and you had them at 11. Like Ole Miss, I think this is the team with the second best chances to really rise up the rankings. If they really all find a spark. Marcel Reed going into year 2 as a starter. Of course, they brought in some weapons from the portal, Casey Concepcion, and Mario Craver, and then Terry Bussey going into year 2. Mike Elko told us at SC Media to expect a big breakout from him. But the problem is they lost a lot on defense, especially in the front. But they did they kept a lot too, especially in the back end. So I feel like the defensive line is going to be a question, but I feel like defensively the secondary is going to be a strong suit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for a team that's so often talked about, I think the biggest story this offseason is Shamar Stewart going to come back? So,
Yeah.
like, there's nothing that screams to me about this Texas A&M defense. There's other than Marcel Reed, there's nothing that screams to me about this Texas A&M offense. So I think they'll be solid. I don't think they'll be terrible, but it's just another one of those teams where they've got a decently tough schedule. They go to Notre Dame this year. They had them at home last year and they lost. So they go to Notre Dame this year. Uh, they've got Florida at home. They go to LSU, to Missouri, and then they got to go visit Texas, um, which, if all goes right for Texas A&M, could be a game in which, the winner goes to the SEC championship game. But I personally, I don't see it going that way for them.
Yeah, we go back to that game last year. That was a game for the second spot in the SEC championship, and the Texas defense shut A&M out in their own home. They just couldn't get anything rolling, especially on the ground and especially near the goal line. They were getting stuffed possession after possession. I feel like this Texas A&M offense, it should be better running the ball. They get Le'Veon Moss back. He was injured in that game last year. And at least according to Mike Elko, Marcel Reed has put on a much-needed bit of muscle to be, I guess, up to the standard of an SEC quarterback. I don't know. I feel like I'm more high on this team than you are. I feel like right now there's a little bit too many questions to rank them high, but I feel like I said with Ole Miss, this is a team that really could explode and just vault up rankings towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think where, my negativity on them comes from is that offense didn't do anything against Texas. Like, they didn't put up any points. And a little bit is because they went forward on, 4th and 1 from the 16, a couple of times, but they didn't score against Texas. The only reason Texas A&M scored in that game was because of a pick six. And
A
they
tipped pick
also
six.
had, yeah, that should have never happened. A lot of, just a lot of dumb plays from Texas that happened late that shouldn't have happened. Almost gave Texas A&M that win, but you know, it's it's not a team that I'm super high on. I don't think they'll be good. Um, that's just where I have it.
All right, moving on to the second member of the Lone Star Showdown, the Texas Longhorns. Current runner-ups in the SEC last year, lost to Georgia in overtime in the SEC championship. And, well, it's the Manning show now. This is Arch Manning's offense, and everybody's expecting him to be, I guess, the best quarterback in the SEC. They're expecting Texas to be the best team in the SEC. I feel like they're definitely top 3 in the SEC, but I'm not one of the people who buys in onto the Arch hype just because his last name is Manning. I feel like there's a lot of stuff he still has to show. Could he be that great? Absolutely. I feel like this team, another chance to be the top team in the league. I feel like this team could be the best team in the country. But I feel like a lot of the offense just hinges on that quarterback.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I think Arch is probably the biggest question coming in for Texas, and for good reason. I think he showed some good promise in some of those games. I know a lot of people were honestly asking him, uh, or asking for Arch to be put in over Quinn in that Ohio State game after they saw, the SEC championship game. But another thing that really makes me think Texas is going to be, the number one team in the SEC this year. Nobody thought they were even going to be above 500 last year. Like everyone was like, "Oh, Texas is going to be, bottom five team in the SEC this year." They think eh, Texas is all this, and a lot of that came from A&M fans who were just salty that Texas is in the SEC now. But Texas went out. They had an easier SEC schedule. I won't deny that. They went out and they produced and they put themselves in the SEC championship game. So I think year two will be a lot better for Texas in the SEC. Um, they still have a lot of those starters on that defense that they had last year. You've still got Anthony Hill Jr. You've still got Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke, who was really starting to become a good player. Trey Moore as well. Michael Taft, one of the hardest hitting safeties uh, in the SEC. Just a lot of guys that can produce for them defensively. They've got a lot of guys that can produce for them offensively. Quintrevian Wisner and CJ Baxter, two of the best backs in one of the best backfields in the SEC. There's a lot of promise for this Texas team, um, and I think they should be a lot better this year.
I didn't even bring up the defense, but the defense has some dogs on them, man. I feel like they could legitimately have the best defense in the country. Like I said, pretty much I feel like Texas performance pretty much hinges on their quarterback.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I heard at SEC Media Day when Texas was up was about Arch and how calm he is with interviews, and it's not just I think Arch is going to be good because he's a Manning. It's I think he's going to be good because he's super. He knows what his last name is. He knows the attention he gets, but it doesn't really phase him that much. He stays humble was the word that a lot of people used at media days, um, and I think that's an interesting way to describe someone who grew up in one of the most recognizable names in the football world.
All right, moving on. Final team for our rankings. The Vanderbilt Commodores. We both had them kind of middle in the pack, I believe. You had them at 9. I had them ranked 11th.
We flipped our Vanderbilt and A&M
Oh, we
rankings.
did flip our Vandy name. I just noticed that. Um, I feel like this is just going to be another, I guess, decent year for Vandy. They surprised a lot of people last year. They got that big upset against Bama, and then they were close in a lot of games. They were close against Tennessee, hard fought against Texas. I feel like going back to last year, there was just sometimes that this Vandy team shows up, and sometimes they doesn't. They don't. A lot of people don't remember they lost to Georgia State last year before beating Alabama. So some pretty big inconsistencies here for this Vandy team. But of course, they bring back Diego Pavia, who's a stud. Um, they got some pretty good backs, which you have to have if you have a run heavy offense. So I feel like this Vandy team will be good. Kind of just middle of the road team.
Yeah, I think that's why I had them as high as I did. Everybody was, dogging in the comments of our TikTok post. They were like, "Oh, why is Vanderbilt over Tennessee?" It's because Vanderbilt has a good quarterback. I think Diego Pavia is the third best quarterback in the SEC, and without a doubt in my mind. And um,
Really?
I think he could even be up there for that second spot, but he is just one of the most exciting players to watch on this Vanderbilt team. Um, he's he's not going to be quiet around you. He's gonna talk in your face. He's got a super big ego, and I think he plays into that very well. I think he plays his game that way, and he's he was exciting last year on a team that was projected to be. towards the bottom of the conference, and
Not towards the
I
bottom,
think he'll be
the
even
bottom.
better.
The
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah, the bottom. Everybody was like, "Oh, Vanderbilt, last place." I think Diego Pavia is going to be one of the best quarterbacks again this year.
Yeah, you were talking about him talking trash. He clearly got under what was it, Malachi Moore's skin at the end of that Bama game when he ended up slamming him into the ground after he tackled him and then kicked the ball away. Got a 15-yard penalty into that game.
Yeah, yeah. He's,
Tell you
he's
that guy's fun to he's fun to watch. I don't know if Vandy's gonna be, you know, entirely too good this year up to the rest of the conference, but they're a fun team to watch. All right, so we've gone through all 16 teams. We've shared our input, we've shared our rankings, and answered some questions that some people had for us and our rankings. Ryan, go ahead and give me a SEC championship prediction.
I mean, I'm gonna go with the basic one. I'm gonna go with Texas, Georgia, and I think Texas will take it this time. I'm gonna give you an interesting one as well. I'm gonna go Georgia, LSU.
Okay, so obviously, according to my rankings, obviously it's going to be Texas and Georgia again. But I want to give you an interesting one too. I think yes, Georgia, but also give me South Carolina to make it to Atlanta.
Mm.
It's a
So,
team.
so both are three teams.
Yeah. Okay. Now that I'm saying that again, I guess
It's
that isn't
it's
that much
interesting, but
interesting.
it's
But
not that much more interesting. I think Alabama could sneak their way in, and that would be huge for Kalen DeBoer. But
I feel like
I'm,
realistically, like there's 8 or 9 teams who at the end of the day could be fighting for that SEC championship trophy and that automatic bid. It's
yeah,
honestly, it's too early to tell now because we
I
had
mean, yeah, we're still 5 weeks out. So
I can't remember we had what 3 different SEC teams be ranked number one last year, I believe. Um, I mean, it was just back and forth so many times. I think A&M was in control to go to Atlanta until what they lost out of their last 3 games, right?
who?
A&M they lost to Auburn and they lost to Texas. They were
Yeah,
well on the way to making their first SEC
yeah, yeah,
championship
yeah, yeah.
game, and then they frankly
They
sold
yeah
the
they
bag at
fumbled
the
the
end of the
bag
season.
hard,
Yeah.
and then lost to USC.
Yeah. Well, that's bowl games.
But hey, bowl games matter. All right,
It
it's another trophy to put in the trophy case
that is
for
true.
a team that doesn't have any important trophies.
Ryan Shapiro certified Texas A&M hater. All right. All right. So we've given our championship predictions. One last thing I want to talk about before we end our very first episode. Um, a lot of people are saying that Clemson is a national championship contender this year. They're going to be one of the best teams. I've seen some people saying they should be ranked number one in the first AP poll. I think LSU on week one walks in to Death Valley and shows why it's Death Valley and beats Clemson. Like
Yeah,
I'm talking by maybe 10 points. Now, LSU has
ooh,
struggled in
ooh,
opening
ooh,
games, but
ooh.
I think this is a do or die year for Brian Kelly, man. I'm saying if he doesn't do something this year, and I mean like something, I'm talking SEC championship appearance, playoff appearance. I think he's gone after this year. This is the team. This is the team to do it. I mean, he had a Heisman Trophy winner and 2 first-round wide receivers, and did next to nothing. So I feel like this is a do or die year for him. So I feel like we're gonna feel that energy first week. They're gonna go to Clemson. They're gonna win big against Clemson.
I don't think they're going to win big against Clemson. I think they'll win. I just don't think they'll win big. LSU is always in close games against tough opponents. I don't think they ever win big. Um, but I think they do win. I don't think they lose against Clemson. I think um, I, really there are people saying Clemson is going to be the number one. It should be the number one team in the AP poll.
I've seen multiple people say that. Yeah,
That's wrong. I
I
think
agree.
Cade Klubnik is up there for best quarterback in the country, but that's just because there's not a lot of returning guys. And,
Well, we're 5 weeks out. We are 6 weeks out. We shall see, man. And trust me,
yeah,
these 6 weeks cannot go by quick enough. All right, and with that, that concludes our first episode of the Pre-Snap Pressure podcast. Tuesday is going to be our upload day, so expect episodes from us every Tuesday. We're going to bring you weekly football coverage. Next Tuesday, it's going to be a similar episode of this, but we're going to be talking about our Big Ten rankings that we just put out. So make sure to stay tuned for that. I'm Nick Collazo. I was joined by Ryan Shapiro, and we'll see you guys next week.